Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the fascinating economic engine of the Kingdom of Cyan. You know, if you think building a superpower requires endless military conquest, well, think again. We're going to dive deep into a maritime kingdom that literally minted its massive fortune from salt, the sea, and a remarkably brilliant financial system. So, let's jump right in.
So, think about it. How exactly do you take a completely lawless pirate bay and turn it into the wealthiest kingdom on the sea? The secret wasn't raising a massive army and plundering the neighbors. It was actually the invention of structured taxation. They realized a very simple, very powerful truth. Order simply pays better than chaos.
Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll cover the pirates who invented taxes, the pillars of their natural wealth, the noble monopolies, the dark trade of blackmail, and finally, how all of this shifted into a massive war economy.
All right, part 1, Pirates who invented taxes. Let's get right into how independent cutthroats suddenly realized that protecting trade was way more profitable than stealing it.
Picture this. Before there was even a kingdom, Palm Bay was just this chaotic haven for smugglers. But as trade started booming, merchants desperately needed protection. Enter King Lumber I. He swooped in, unified the rogue fleets, set up a permanent harbor guard, and standardized customs duties. In one brilliant stroke, he transformed actual pirates into citizens, and even better, into tax collectors.
Then comes King Edmund, Lumber's successor, and he brought true financial architecture to the realm. The sheer breadth of his system was incredible. Farmers gave a portion of their harvest, merchants paid harbor duties, landowners were charged by the acre, and fleets paid an annual fee based on vessel count. It was a completely comprehensive net, yet it was highly popular. Why? Because those taxes were directly funding roads, bridges, and public granaries. It was a remarkably successful early model of public reinvestment.
Moving right along to part 2, the pillars of natural wealth. Because let's face it, a booming economy needs raw resources, and Cyan's physical landscape was an absolute gold mine. Cyan's geographic placement was just a total masterpiece. To the west, you have the expansive Lagan Sea providing endless maritime shipping routes. And to the east, the Troadian River carved out these incredibly fertile valleys. Sandwiched right there between global trade and rich agriculture, Cyan's geography was honestly its greatest capital.
The whole economic system rested on 5 massive pillars. You've got fine wines pouring out of Darwinian and sugarcane absolutely dominating the southern plantations. Then, maritime industrial centers took that sugar and distilled it into highly potent rum, while gold pulled from the western hills ensured reliable royal coinage. But the ultimate pillar? That was the sea itself, the great connector exporting all these goods to a very thirsty world.
Which brings us to part 3, the noble economic monopolies. You see, the crown didn't actually manage all these industries directly. Instead, they acted almost like a massive holding company for the great houses.
These noble houses were essentially the mega-corporations of their day. Take House Coopers. They held a total, airtight monopoly on the Darwinian wine trade, exporting vintages for astronomical sums. Meanwhile, House Beaumont managed the southern sugar plantations, cultivating vast, deeply cosmopolitan estates. They weren't just nobles sitting around. They were the actual engines driving the nation's GDP.
What's really fascinating is how this created 2 wildly different models of wealth generation. House Beaumont relied on quiet commercial influence and highly refined agricultural estates. Contrast that directly with House Harrow. They were fierce industrialists, operating out of dark, volcanic stone castles, just churning out rum and commanding very aggressive naval fleets. One grew the sweet cane, the other literally burned it into liquid profit.
House Harrow actually went by the motto, "From Fire Life." They didn't just casually make rum, they elevated distillation into a massive industrial art form and wielded it like an economic weapon. They were feared across the kingdom for their sheer ambition, but completely respected for their absolute mastery over the naval trade routes.
Part 4, the dark trade of blackmail. Now, to truly understand the entirety of Cyan's economic engine, we have to look objectively at the illicit underbelly of the eastern frontier.
Operating out of an imposing iron and white stone fortress, House Blackmere completely controlled eastern river commerce. They were a huge paradox, really. They presented themselves as these ultra-respectable political elites at court while simultaneously strictly managing a deeply controversial shadow supply chain.
Their motto, "The bond is wealth," hid a very dark reality. Reporting strictly from the historical sources,
House Blackmare built their staggering fortune on an illicit trade in foreign captives. This unpaid labor force was funneled directly into the sugar plantations and western mines to artificially inflate productivity. And, while this was morally condemned by many folks in the kingdom, the crown mostly just looked the other way, completely addicted to the immense economic output it was generating.
Finally, Part 5, an economy built for war. The big question here is, how does a highly specialized commercial machine pivot when faced with an existential threat?
When King Lumber III saw the Gondorian Empire mobilizing in the east, he initiated a terrifyingly efficient economic pivot. The escalation is staggering. In year 1, he aggressively audited taxes to squeeze out every single drop of capital. By year 5, he completely halted public works, indefinitely pausing the Royal University. By year 16, all that funneled wealth had transformed the merchant hub of Dorwinion into a heavily armed fortress with massive powder magazines. Education and culture were sacrificed entirely for defense.
And the ultimate results of that massive pivot? It all comes down to the number 30. That is exactly how many massive cruiser-door-class warships Cyan managed to build by the year 417. Packed to the brim with heavy bronze cannons, these vessels required a mind-boggling amount of capital, timber, and specialized labor. It proved just how incredibly productive Cyan could be when its economy was fully mobilized by the crown.
But this brings us right back to the harsh reality of geopolitics. Cyan's structured taxes, corporate monopolies, and geographic lock allowed them to totally conquer the Western Sea. But is raw economic power truly enough to stop an 18,000-strong invading army marching from the east? It's the ultimate question of wealth versus might. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and keep questioning how the mechanics of wealth truly shape the world around us.